It's been a couple of weeks since I've done a video pertaining to Brett Favre and the welfare scandal that he is thrown himself into. Now, the last time I talked about the welfare king, it wasn't necessarily about him. It was about Phil Bryant. But now we are back talking about Brett Favre because we have another update in this whole saga. So apparently, Brett Favre and his attorneys have filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit that is against him for the role he plays in with the welfare scandal. Again, this goes back to a video that I did about him where he tried to make himself seem like he was a victim. If y'all remember, if not, I have a whole playlist dedicated to this thing. You can just go back and look through them. There was probably like one of my earlier videos in here, but it's not a lot of videos in this playlist, so it shouldn't be hard to find. And just look at the title and you'll see for yourself. But it just sounds to me like he's trying to throw himself again into the victim position as if he did absolutely nothing wrong. And I'm telling you right now, those attorneys of his, though, they gonna dig to try to see if they can find any infringement to get him off of this and let him just completely skate away. After all, he's skating right now. He hasn't, and nor has Phil Bryant, been criminally charged with anything that they've done. Nothing. So they're already skating right now, but they want to continue wearing those skates. Now I'm going to go ahead and read this article that's coming from ESPN. Hall of Fame quarterback Brett Favre, one of 38 defendants being sued by the Mississippi Department of Human Services, filed a motion through his lawyers on Monday in Mississippi Judicial Court to dismiss the complaint against himself and Favre Enterprises. It is apparent the MDHS has sued Favre, a Mississippi and national celebrity, in an effort to deflect responsibility for its own egregious wrongdoing, the motion read in part. According to a Mississippi state audit, at least $77 million in temporary assistance for needy families, or TAM, funds, which originated from MDHS before flowing to nonprofits, were diverted from the poorest people in America, poorest state, toward rich and powerful Mississippians. 6 people have been arrested in the case, 5 of whom have pled guilty to state charges. Favre has not been charged criminally, but was named in the civil suit on May 9th. Again, there's his privilege right there. All these other people around him have been charged with something except him and Phil Bryant. This kind of reminds me of what happened in Flint, Michigan, where you had the former governor up there, his name escapes me right now, who had a part to play in the contaminated water in Flint, but all the other people around him got charged with something, and this guy was able to leave office completely unscathed. He never got charged with anything. To this day, he's still just floating around. I don't think he holds any political office right now because that would have been silly of him to go and do, considering what people know about him. But still, he never got charged with anything. He never was on trial. He never spent a day in jail. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Flint, they never fixed the issue. And now tack on what's going on in Houston. Anyone noticing a pattern? I think Professor Black Truth did a Moment of Truth video about that. MDHS's lawsuit is nothing more than a baseless attempt to blame Brett Favre for its own failure to oversee the welfare funds placed in its trust, Favre's lawyer Eric Hirschman said in an email statement to ESPN. Mr. Favre never had any control over how Mississippi spent its welfare funds. He never made any misrepresentations to anyone. The guy took money for speeches that he said he was going to give that he never gave. The text message that he sent to Nancy New via Phil Bryant said, "I hope the media doesn't find out about this." Well, like, why do they keep leaving this part out? And they keep trying to make it seem like he didn't know what that money was for. And like I said in my other video, if you feel suspicious about where that money is coming from, then maybe it's best in your best interest to not take it. And the thing is, Brett Favre has hundreds of millions of dollars. If he wanted to build these facilities that did get built, why didn't he spend his own money and then use it as a tax write-off? Again, they keep leaving that part out, but I'm not leaving it out. A representative for MDHS told ESPN on Monday that at this point, MDHS doesn't want to try this case in the media, and we believe that merits of the case will stand on their own. We will leave that to a court to decide. Also, a representative from State Auditor Shad White's office told ESPN, "It's ludicrous to say that Mr. Favre has been singled out in any way. And as far as our office is concerned, Mr. Favre remains liable for $228,000 in interest for non-performance of the contract in question." Exactly. You took you that's the part that still gets me too. You paid back like 1.4 or $1.5 million that you owed, but you kept the $228,000 in interest. That still puzzles me. Like, how in the world that you can't pay back that small interest compared to the massive amount that you paid back? Why are you keep holding on to $228,000 when that's literally a drop in the bucket for him? Favre was paid $1.1 million from TAMP funds for speeches Weiss says he never made, according to state audit and on a civil lawsuit. He eventually paid the money back, but the state is seeking the amount it says he owes in interest. Prevacus, a company developing a concussion drug in which Favre is the top investor and stockholder, also received TAMP funds. The athletic foundation at Favre's alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi, received $5 million in welfare money. Text messages show Favre pushed state officials for funding for a new volleyball facility on campus during the time his daughter was on the team. The volleyball facility was not mentioned in the civil lawsuit, but the motion filed by Favre's lawyers said that it served as one of the false pretexts for MDHS to target Favre in this lawsuit. As such, the motion filed Monday concluded that Favre has already repaid to MDHS the only funds MDHS alleges he received, and claimed that MDHS cannot allege that Favre ever received any portion of payments to Prevacus. The motion also reiterated Favre's position that he did not know the source of the money he received. He told Fox News Digital in October that he had been quote-unquote unjustly smeared in the media. That's the one I was talking about, where he tried to make himself feel like he was the victim in all of this. Monday's motion also stated Favre, unlike MDHS director John Davis and Mississippi Community Education founder Nancy New, and the other public officials, in fact, did not know that the funds he received were TAMP funds or were subject to a legal use restriction, had no responsibility or ability to audit or monitor, let alone control the use of MDHS or MCEC funds, and did nothing wrong in connection with those funds. Hirschman's statement continued. As the state auditor has acknowledged, Mr. Favre never knew welfare funds were involved in the first place. Once he found out, he returned all of the funds he received 6 months before MDHS filed its lawsuit. As the state auditor also acknowledged, Mr. Favre's conduct deserves applause, not a frivolous lawsuit. Why would we want to applaud this? He should have never taken the money anyway, and that's the point that I'm keep trying to drive home. And hopefully, you see, that's why they need me in that courtroom. That text message of not questioning, but worried that the media would find out is the thing that needs to drive this whole thing home. If you were so worried about the media finding out, then you should not have done it in the first place, which means you knew that whatever funds you were taking, you weren't supposed to be taking in the first place, whether you knew these were welfare funds or not. Again, this is a man that has, as far as I know, a net worth of over $140 million, which means at the time it probably could have been higher than that. You could have used your own money to build this facility. After all, he was only asking for a little bit of money, like $5 million, $6 million, something along the line. It wasn't even $10 million. That would not have hurt him. But unfortunately, that hurt other people that needed it, that don't have millions of dollars in the bank or in several banks. He says, we believe that after court reviews our motion, this case will be dismissed. However, according to text messages made public in the civil lawsuits, Favre asks New, this is the text message that I keep talking about, if you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much? To answer your question, Favre, yes, the media did find out how much money you asked for and where it came from. That just shows you right there, it was a level of concern that he had. So that tells me, and it tells everyone else who's aware, that he was about to do some shady business. Favre continued to press state officials for money even after being told in a text by then Governor Phil Bryant that use of these funds is tightly controlled. Any improper use could result in violation of federal law. Auditors are currently reviewing the use of these funds. Now peep that. This is what Phil Bryant told him. He told him in layman's terms that these funds are very, very heavily watched because they are government issue funds. He was basically telling Brett Favre in subliminals that this was federal money. This was not just money that fell out the sky and it landed somewhere in the woods and they just happened to find it and just give it to him. He was basically telling him that you have to be extra careful with these funds because if they do find out, then it's going to be a lot of dirty hands, and your hand's going to be one of them. It was one of those things of be careful what you ask for. It's almost like he gave him a little warning, but Brett Favre took the money anyway. So again, this does not make Brett Favre innocent at all. And that's the whole article right there. It's crazy, right? Phil Bryant, his hands is just as dirty, but at least he gave Brett Favre a warning, but Brett Favre just went along with it anyway. So yes, Brett Favre is far from an innocent person in all of this. His lawyers and attorneys can try to make a case or a claim for him to make it seem like he's this person that just needs to be saved somehow and needs to be protected. F that. Brett Favre, he needs to be criminally charged just like everybody else that's involved with this and get his ass in a courtroom because as far as I'm concerned, he's guilty as charged. Well, guilty as should be charged.